Okay, so I started recording, and let's start with the agenda. So this documentation. So if you have any questions related to the presentation, then ask the question here. Then we can answer here, and we can discuss throughout the whole session as well. I can start with describing different parts that we are going to present in today's presentation. Like I'll describe how we can use Bullet, then what is the drawback of Bullet to find N+1 queries, and given a visualization, how that helps us to find out N+1 query. And then, we'll just go through different code segments. So the first question is like, what is N+1 query? I want to describe, so there's a definition here. So I don't want to read this now, but rather I just want to describe with an example. It is easier to explain what is N+1 query. Just sticking to this, by just sticking to this example. So let's look at this example. Here you can see there's a model called article, and there's another model is called author. So and article has an association, belongs to author. So that means article model, each author has a number of articles. So now if you make a query like article order by descending order, like published at, and limited by only 5, that means like you are grabbing 5 articles, and for each article you want to know what is the author name. All right, so in Rails you can do this. This is the Rails code. So what is happening behind this code is like, for the first query here, this line, we are triggering a select statement that select a SQL query that will grab the 5 articles based on this order, published at order, descending order. And then you can see here's a loop. So for each article, it's grabbing the author of that particular article. So if we have 5 articles, that means we are again running 5 more select SQL query for getting the author information, right? So this is a perfect scenario for N+1 query. This is here, actually, we can optimize this part. Instead of triggering 5 additional additional select query, we can just do it in one query. That's why it's called N+1 query problem. In our code base, there are different places where we have these situations, but it's not visible immediately. Like whenever we write this kind of code, we sometimes miss this part. Like, okay, there may happen an N+1 query here. Okay, so it's hard to track just at looking at the code sometimes. So that is why we use some tools to figure out whether there exists any N+1 query in the existing code. One of this tool is called Bullet. So Bullet is a Ruby gem. So you can see, so this gem is used to find out N+1 query. And there are some limitation of using bullet gem is that one of that limitation is it is only used to figure out whether there is any eager loading or lazy loading happening in your code. Uh, and it can only be used for select SQL query. So what is eager loading or lazy loading? By default, uh, any ORM, in our example, it's an active record, okay? It's lazy loading. That means lazy loading means the model, whenever you define any association inside the model, like belongs to author inside this article model. So by default, it is lazy loading. It will not load the associated object by default for active record. Okay, so here you can see article order by descending order and limit 5. So that means you're telling the Rails to grab 5 articles order by published at in descending order, but the Rails will only grab the articles. It will not uh, grab, or it will not retrieve information about authors from the database. That is why it is called lazy loading. So it is lazy loaded by default. All right. And eager loading is just the opposite of lazy loading. Like if you can specify to Rails that, okay, use eager loading instead of lazy loading, then Rails will load author as well as articles, like whenever it's querying the database, underlying database. Let me show you an example in GitLab Rails. So this is my GDK. You can see localhost. And I intentionally inserted N+1 query in this page. Let me show you the code. So you can see this is a bullet branch. This is a Git branch. Here I am diffing against master branch. Here I just inserted 2 lines of code. These 2 lines of code contains N+1 query. So let me go to the actual file. So here you can see this is a Rails controller, and this is a index action for that controller. This is pipelines controller. So in this inside this action, I added these 2 lines. All right. So because of this, whenever you load your page in your GDK, if you look at your performance bar, there's a bullet plugin here, you can see. And if you click that, it will give you some hints about your eager loading, like hints about, like, you need to use eager loading because there is an N+1 query here. It will give you some warning. So it will give you some suggestions here, like use includes project to remove this N+1 query. So this is how you can use bullet in your development process. We are using it in GitLab as well. So here you can see there is a problem, lazy loading problem here actually. And if you include, sorry, I'm just trying to solve this issue by including project, right? Then save it. Now let me refresh this page. Okay, it will take a while. Okay. It's still loading. So yeah, it's already loaded. So now if you look at the performance bar, there is no bullet. All right, so that means all the N+1 query happening on this page, uh, those are fixed already. All right, so let's dig into this a little bit more by using Rails console. Okay, so I mentioned that these two lines uh, contains N+1 queries. How? Let's look into that. So I'm trying to open up a Rails console here. Okay, and by that time, let me just copy this line. Okay, copy this line. So I'm now in Rails console here. You can see I'm going to run this command, like I'm trying to find out 5 pipelines. Okay, so if I run this, then you can see there's a select SQL statement related to that line. All right, so this select statement or select SQL query actually gets 5 CI pipelines. All right, now we have the list of pipelines in this pipelines variable, and we'll use that to get all the related projects. Okay, so here you can see this is a loop. For each pipeline, it's trying to get a project. All right, so here you can see there are actually 5 select statement for getting project and another 5 for roots. Okay, so 5 plus 5 10 and another one here, total 11 select queries. All right, now let's do it another way. So we can just do like this, like include project. If we include project, let's see what happens. So first SQL query for getting the 5 CI pipelines, and the next one is interesting. It's getting all the projects based on IDs, a list of IDs you can see here. So it's getting all the projects in a single select query. All right. Now, if we run this, what will happen? You can see now we have reduced the number of select queries here. Okay. Previously, there were 10 select queries. Now we have only 3. We can also reduce this by creating nested include. So let me see whether I'm correct. It should look like this. Okay, yeah, that will work actually. So if we do this, now you can see there are 3 select. The first select is just for getting the CI pipelines, 5 CI pipelines. Next one, just a single select query for getting all the projects. Another one, oh, actually, this is not correct. Actually, let me try this. Yeah, actually this one. So next one is just getting all the projects. And the third one is just for getting all the routes. So only 3 select queries. Now, if we run this, like if we try to get uh, pipeline for all the if we want to get project for all the pipelines, then there needs no additional select query. So previously with N+1 query, we had almost 11 select queries. Now we have only 3 select queries. Okay, so this is how uh, you can use Bullet to figure out whether there exists any N+1 query in your code, and based on the suggestion that Bullet provides, uh, you can change your code to eliminate these issues. Okay. The thing is, like, Bullet is not always good to figure out all the N+1 queries, especially if the N+1 query is a nested one. All right, like this one, I included here project then root. So although I haven't used root previously, I just used this. Okay, and the bullet cannot figure out that there is another N+1 query in that code. Okay, so bullet is not always helpful for that. Another case is like if you have N+1 query for insert or update, bullet is not that helpful. So bullet is only helpful for eager loading or lazy loading issue. Like bullet will figure out whether you have unnecessary eager loading, or your lazy loading is not good enough for kind implementation. There is a opportunity to optimize that, but bullet can figure out that. But if you think about hunting for N+1 query in insert or update, then you need to use other tools. Okay. All right, so let's see an example of insert or update with N+1 query and how we can figure them out. So usually for that, there's no good tool like Bullet, but we have some visualization tool in GitLab. One of them is Kibana. So in Kibana, um, you can just use a Kibana visualization to understand the database write performance for some particular uh, controller or sidekick worker. So in this example, I'm trying to understand the DB write count, the traffic of DB write count for store security reports worker. Okay, I filtered it using store security reports worker, and you can see how many, and the interval is 6 hours, every 6 hours. So in this graph, you can see how many queries write. Actually, these are all insert or update DB writes happening for this worker. So if this is huge, right now this is huge. Actually, you can see more than, sometimes we get more than 2,000 queries. Okay, uh, that means there may exist n plus query for this worker. So this tool will give you some idea that this is a very heavy worker. I mean, database insertion is it's doing a lot of database insertion. There is a possibility to have N+1 query. Just look into that code. So this tool will just give you a suggestion for that. And after getting this information, then you need to actually look into the code by yourself uh, to understand whether you can optimize N+1 query for write or insertion. because you cannot use bullet here. Another thing is you can see bullet is added here like as a performance bar element. But for sidekick work or sidekick job, what will happen? How can we figure out select queries, eager loading or lazy loading for them? So in that case, actually, there's no performance bar for that. So you can use a bullet log for that. Let me go to the bullet. So logger, actually, you can enable bullet logger. Then you can see the log files to understand the eager loading or lazy loading issue, and whether there is an N+1 query for sidekick job. All right. Okay. Let's look into this one, actually, this service, to understand the N+ query in insertion. Actually, there's a MR already that we have already worked on recently. This is related to store report service. So if we look into this MR, then we'll understand how we handle that. So I'll just go to the main portion where we solve this issue. So let me give you a brief description of about this work. So this service is used to store security reports in the database, and bullet is not helpful here, but Kibana gave us some ideas that this service is causing a lot of insertion. So just look into that service. So that's why we looked into this service, and we figured out this part, actually. So where is that? There's a loop. Yeah, okay, this part. So for each finding of a report, we are calling this a create vulnerability finding. And the create vulnerability finding is a huge method. Let me go down a little bit. Create records here, actually. So this is the method, create new vulnerability finding. And actually, it would be better if I use my Vim to grab those things. Right, then size. Actually, yeah, this is the method, create all vulnerabilities. All right. So in this method, this is used inside a loop, actually. Where's that go? Actually, they have optimized this part. Oh yeah, actually they have, yeah, recently this part is updated. There's that MR, whenever we are working on that MR, it was old. And create vulnerability report, yeah. And here we can see another one here. Actually, there's a loop here. Okay, and create vulnerability finding. And let's see, create vulnerability finding. So this is a huge method. Here we are actually storing different security information one by one. So instead of doing one by one inside that loop, we can do it by a bulk insert. Okay, so this is how we remove the N+1 query for different patterns like this in this particular file. So we used in this solution, you can see there is a bulk insert here, insert all. So we created all the records, a list of records, then we inserted, we used bulk insert for one by using one SQL insert query. This is how we solve this N+1 query issue for insert. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Any questions so far? Okay. So I can talk about how we can test how we can write unit test for N+1 query. Here's an example. You can see. So in this our spec file, after solving the N+1 query issues, you can write a test like this. Like this test will ensure that your implementation haven't introduced any new N+1 query. It just it's not making it worse. Okay, so this is a test you can use for that. By default, we do not we disable SQL query cache in test environment. That's why you need to enable this for this kind of for writing this kind of unit test. And yeah, query recorder is used for writing that unit test. So using query recorder, you can keep record of how many SQL queries are run by a particular method call or service call. And after that, you can create some stuff, some records in the database that may cause N+1 query, and you can just compare the previous count with the current count. So this is how you can write some unit tests for resolving N+1 queries, after resolving N+1 queries. All right. Okay. Yeah, any question, or let me see. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions later. Otherwise, I think we can end this session, or we can, yeah, just write some questions here. I can answer later if I don't have the answer now. Yeah. Thanks for joining this session. See you later. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.